The compact minivan class. The imperatives are sufficient space and a hint of lifestyle in this hotly contested market segment. There are rivals aplenty, all anxious to be the chic replacements of yesterday's delivery vans. The latest compact van comes from the Czech Republic, the Škoda Roomster. Motorvision has followed the long way of the Roomster from the first sketches through the prototypes to the finished product now on the road. Let's see what this clever compact is all about and how the car makers at the Škoda works managed to build one in only 30 hours, from the roll of steel, from which the body will be fashioned, through the montage to the end of the production chain. And at the end, this is what you get, a Czech with attitude. The design certainly stresses lifestyle and sets it apart from its boxy rivals. The broken line of its flanks, however, take a bit of getting used to. The big back windows give the kids in the back a great view, and the white-trimmed rear lights look quite elegant. The interior is welcoming, everything looks well thought out, and the finish is good. Options include a parking assist system, a navigation package, and air conditioning. Everything you could ask for to deliver ease and comfort. A big plus, the really big loading capacity with every bit of space well utilized. From 450 to 1,780 liters of cargo, the choice is yours. The back seats can be moved forward, backward, and sideways. The middle seat weighs only 12 kilos, the side seats 16. Taking them out and carrying them away is therefore no problem. Then there's plenty of space for the maximum load of 515 kilograms. 6 different motors are available. The basic power plant is a 3-cylinder, 64 horsepower petrol engine, possibly just a bit too weak for overland travel. The top version is a 1.9-litre TDI with 105 horsepower. Producing 214 Newton-meters of torque, this is the best fitted for the task. Even on winding country roads, the Roomster's height, 1.60 m, is no handicap. It drives like a normal station wagon. In particular, when diesel-powered, the journey is quick and the fuel consumption, claimed by the manufacturer at 5.4 litres, moderate, although for our test drive, consumption was 7 litres. Škoda presented the Roomster to the international media in Prague, with classical pop, a laser show, and much popping of corks. This is the first time that within the Volkswagen Group a car has been designed for construction on a modular basis. This is the secret of the Roomster. Often people ask me what cars should be compared to the Roomster. Then I'm really happy to respond by saying that comparison with normal cars is impossible. This is a unique vehicle system, as unique as the concept on which its manufacture is based. The axles, the metal of the front assembly, come from the Fabia. The rear axle is that of the Octavia. The rear assembly is sheet metal from the Golf and the Octavia. Overall, there has been a compensation, and the result is the midsection entirely new and, above all, built for crash safety regulations we'll have to abide by in the coming years. Then there's the metal work for the new VarioFlex rear seating system. The Roomster will be assembled in a brand new plant where today the Škoda Superb is also made. Soon the factory will be working at full capacity with 350 Roomsters per day leaving the assembly lines. The plan is to build 50,000 a year.
Wir können dort 350 Fahrzeuge pro Tag bauen von dem Roomster. Daran haben wir uns eingerichtet. Geplant haben wir 50.000 Fahrzeuge pro Jahr zu bauen.
80 years ago, Škoda manufacturing looked very different. This was the era of early industrial manufacturing technology, which meant a lot of handwork. The pressing plant today in Kvashny. The pressure of many tons brings the steel sheet to its desired shape. Here are turned out hundreds of mudguard segments which will be tomorrow needed in assembly. Huge mechanized transporters take the pressed components to their next destination. Nevertheless, the quality control at the end remains qualified handwork. It was 2 years ago that the Roomster began to take on its present form. Designer Peter Ola, one of several responsible for the project, looks back on the metamorphosis from ambitious pencil sketch to fully functioning automobile. And this is what it looked like at the very beginning, a spaceship made by Škoda.
We still kept the balance of having a normal car and having a MPV which is offering a lot of space in the back and which is definitely offering some sort of the comfort and cinema effect in the back.
This is how it looked at one stage. This was the historic Roomster concept car which stood in the spotlight for just a few days at the 2003 IAA Auto Show. The safety of pedestrians was given high priority. This design stresses traffic safety for sure, but how were things in the old days? In 1926, shaping the steel was handwork, and the resulting workmanship was, to a certain extent, a matter of luck. Today, the robots are in charge, and watching them is not as entertaining as observing the workers in great-grandfather's day. Car building today, the side panels are welded to the flooring, a job the robots deal with at lightning speed and with fantastic exactitude. Like greedy vultures with powerful beaks and empty eyes, they pounce on the metal, biting it, chewing it up so that the sparks fly. But this is not feeding time, it's entirely constructive. From these beaks fall finished car bodies. It's less hectic in the design department of the development team at Mlada Boleslav. This is a peek behind the curtains most car makers keep firmly drawn. And even in 2005, the Roomster design was handled as top secret. For us, the model makers have pulled out the early drawings and the priceless clay model they made in 2004. This allowed them not only to optimize the aesthetic, but also the aerodynamics of the car to be. Back to Kvashny. The Roomster is making progress. The freshly built carrosserie boasts not less than 145 different measurement data points. Each of these will be checked offline electronically, right next to the production line. Maximum precision also in the test laboratory. Here, the specialists make sure that all the electrical components talk clearly among themselves and are able to withstand all kinds of interferences. Do the car radio's stored frequencies get deleted when the engine is switched on? When the headlights are lit, do the electronic door locks go crazy? Does the alarm scream when the car is locked? The computer simulates these and other event combinations which could occur in everyday automobile use so that any potential weaknesses can be diagnosed and cured. In another part of the Škoda works, we find Mlada Boleslav. The Roomster has now passed through the clip station where the floor pan and side elements were joined together. Next is the paint shop, but we'll have no difficulty recognizing what comes out afterwards to make its way through the montage line. Back in the 1920s, painting the car bodies was a tiresome job and the workers had no protection. But there was a touch of elegance. The foreman wore collar and tie and natty jackets. Everything done by hand. Body painting today. First comes the primer, then the lacquer. It takes 17 hours before the Roomster emerges in its glory, a blue wonder. The Roomster underway. In spite of its higher center of gravity, it drives just like a normal passenger car. Under the hood, there are 6 engines which can be installed, the top version being the 1.9-litre TDI with 105 horsepower. What kind of noise these motors and all the other components of the car make, that's what has to be checked in the acoustic laboratory. A Roomster making itself heard. There are 50 microphones to pick up every single sound. A young engineer spends an entire day sitting in the car and putting the pedal to the metal, all according to a fixed scenario. Push to maximum revs, then foot off the gas. A special camera analyzes the sounds generated and shows them as colored diagrams on the computer, one for each microphone. And the crash test dummy in the passenger seat sits patiently, with perhaps a resigned smile, in the middle of this soundscape. Every sort of noise the car makes is measured, both internal and external acoustics are taken into account, and there are regulations governing sound emissions to be respected. Pavel has just completed a test run, now for the evaluation of the data. His colleagues are still not fully satisfied, something not quite right with one of the interior microphones. The patient crash test dummy would be deaf by now if this curve were true. Okay, back to the test. What we hear now is not allowed to be louder than 74 decibels. Wind, motor and tires are the most important sources of noise. A warm jacket, heavy boots, gloves. It's time for the low temperature testing. The Roomster needs to function perfectly even in the coldest weather. Test driver Peter is checking this in the cold chamber at minus 20 degrees. Will any of the many components fail in these conditions? Does the motor start immediately? How quickly do the oil and water warm up? How soon can the heating defrost the windshield? All questions which have to be answered before the Roomster leaves the development stage. But specially for Motor Vision, the vehicle testing team have brought out the legendary matte black prototype. It's right-hand drive and has a good few 100,000 test kilometers on the odometer, but even today, even at minus 20 degrees, the interior reaches a cozy 28 plus after only a few minutes. Back to the assembly line. In a few hours, the Roomster will be finished and ready to roll, but first comes the wedding. For car makers, the wedding is the moment when the carrosserie is conjoined with the suspension and undercarriage. It's a significant moment, one of the very last and with the largest number of montage steps to be executed. Each adjustment made by the young workers can have an effect on the health of the car and its image when it reaches the buyer. Years ago, the responsibility of the individual was an even greater burden than today. Then there were no electronic systems to double-check the worker's output. It was a time when cars built in the mornings by well-rested and cheerful workers were often longer-lasting and better made than those rolling off the line later in the day. Jumping forward to the 21st century and into the middle of the design center. Here we see the front windscreen. It's made as if for an airliner, curved and with black A-pillars. We see the whole cockpit, the whole volume of space. There's such a lot of room for driver and front seat passenger.
Ja, schon auf dem zu dem Fahrerplatz, also dass wir haben dieselbe Perspektive wie der Fahrer. Ja, wir sehen den ganzen Cockpit. Ja, schon wir sehen die Volumen, wie das läuft. Ja, und dann es gibt ganz viel Platz in die Räume, wo Fahrer und Beifahrer sitzen.
From 3D model to data control model in the development department in Mlad Boleslav. The virtual technology department. Here, the Czech spaceship had a digital reality before it existed in steel. The felt slippers are a must. And so is the marker with which the test engineer gestures so that the scanning cameras can move around freely in virtual space. What can the driver reach in his position in the cockpit? Is anything hidden? His colleagues note the salient points, and their findings make their way into the construction planning and the interior design. What fails to lie optimally in the driver's view, here ergonomic standards are paramount. All this can be checked without the need for a real car to exist. It's like a flight simulator with a tracking program to log the data and check back with the space defined by the 3D program. Car making in 1926. The steering wheel is mounted. Yes. They managed just fine without virtual reality in the good old days, all the way through to final montage. 80 years later, the nuptials of carrosserie and suspension and motor. Each car gets its extras, accessories and custom configuration. No tolerance of confusion at this stage. Each manipulation can only be right when the preceding manipulation was 100% right. This is the customer first principle. What you give me to work on, I first have to judge it. Only then can I add to it. And then it all goes fast. There's fuel going into the tank, even before the steering wheel has been installed. A final hint that the Roomster will soon be on the move under its own power. The pace of the assembly line is merciless. Here come the doors. But this is how 300 units a day can be turned out, and there'll be new jobs to be had in Kvashny. At present, there are 640 staff working in the montage, over 200 per shift. They come out of dozens of different training programs. And the performance of all 640 of them is the responsibility of this very strict young man. He oversees the manufacturing quality, the production tempo, each and every eventuality. Karl Panusch is head of the Roomster montage, just 32 years old, a qualified engineer, and for the last 2 years assistant to the production manager. As senior colleagues gather at the end of every shift, it's about quality controls for the cockpit assembly and door montage. The infamous elk test on the old Škoda test track in Huzilota, not far from the main works. Here suspension and brakes are put to the test for hours on end. Here we meet Martin Hrdlicka as Škoda veteran. Both his father and grandfather were on the Škoda board of directors. He himself is head of development for vehicle suspensions, and he's just finished his engineering doctorate. Dr. Hrdlicka has a very personal stake in the result of these tests. After all, the suspension of the Roomster was developed under his leadership, which gives him an almost parental interest. Martin Hrdlicka is happy with the test outcomes. The toughest challenge is full braking while cornering. The Roomster is well behaved even in this critical situation. The watchful electronic control system is hardly called upon for assistance. First, Škoda built a well-trimmed suspension based on those of the Fabia and the Octavia. Then they gave the van its electronic stability package. There's a decent safety margin for the suspension, which makes it predictable and reliable even in extreme situations. Balanced settings give the Roomster excellent lateral stability. An autumn morning in the high mountains of Austria. Early fog and low cumulus cloud allow only a rare glimpse of the summit of the majestic Großglockner mountain range. Nothing happening yet on the legendary mountain test trail, on which generations of automobiles have absolved their brakes tests. Just a single Roomster, climbing up the road, unique in all of Europe. It's a continuous 20-kilometer downhill stretch. Not a bad place to test brakes, then. At the wheel, Martin Hrdlicka. He knows this road well, but each time it's an adventure. Several generations of Škoda engineers have learned what this mountain is about, what it means for a car's brake systems. We have developed precise methods and continue to refine the technology. Brake systems are a complicated subject. The mountain has a potential motive energy, the car has a certain weight, and we try to conquer this energy combination with trusty brake systems.
Das Fahrzeug hat ein Gewicht und wir versuchen diese Energie mit der Bremsanlage zu vernichten.
20 downhill kilometers until the discs glow red hot. The energy goes into the braking, in the drivetrain, cooled down by the passage of the air. Aerodynamics has a role to play too, and all these aspects we can examine in detail and come to our conclusions. One of perhaps 300 per day. The blue Roomster is complete and will soon roll into the yard and then onto the test circuit at the Škoda works. The Roomster is on dealers' lots at under 13,000 euros. Extras like the panorama roof and other little luxuries are worth paying a bit more for. It's a small car full of big ideas. With their new spaceship, the traditional marque Škoda is heading in an exciting new direction.